Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Invest 360. For those of you who are just joining us, this was initially supposed to be a show about educating the masses about investing and properties and so forth. And 1 second, get a little bit of feedback. All right, cool. So yes, this is initially supposed to be a program where we educate the masses about the importance of investing in their communities and so forth. And then, like everything COVID, we had to pivot, and it became investing in yourself by hearing stories of other people who have made it, have been successful in possibly a trade that you might be wanting to get in or so forth, or just need that motivation and inspiration in life. So here we have my co-host Carla Vital, and today we're going to be kicking off by interviewing a professor, author, radio host, just I guess Jackie of all trades, um, Professor Lisa Harris. But before that, Carlo is going to greet us and tell us about the backbone of Invest 360. Happy Smiles. Take it away. Oh, 1 second. Like all things, there we go.
Might was muted, right?
Yeah.
Guys,
we still haven't pivoted from that part of the pandemic.
Exactly. So, guys, hello. How are you, Joe? Always a pleasure, man. It's good to see you again. And Lisa, is a pleasure meeting you and talking with you. I'm really excited for tonight. But yeah, guys, happy smiles. So yes, the backbone of Invest 360. And Happy Smiles organization, we're a 501c3 nonprofit built with the purpose of helping those in need through fundraising, education, and charity. And we really primarily started for kindness, right? Kindness, our own heart. And we truly believe that the little things in life are going to help people through their day. All right. You might not know it, but, a kind word or a smile or a hug, it's going to get somebody through their day, and we've definitely grown from that little bit, and we're doing a lot more now. But that's where we started from, and that's what we want to try and achieve every single day. All right. So, guys, if you guys are out there, happy smiles, a new era and kindness. Please be kind to everyone out there. If you'd like to look us up, Happy Smiles on Facebook and Happy Smiles Inc. on Venmo if you like to help us out in any way you can. But tonight, guys, we'd like to introduce you to Lisa Harris. Thank you so much for being on. It's a pleasure to speak with you tonight. And we're going to kind of kick it right off. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from and your family, and, give us a little bit about Lisa.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for having me. And I also want to reiterate that you should support Happy Smiles Inc. So make sure you do that. I think that's important. So very glad to be here. I am originally from Elizabeth, New Jersey. Grew up. I have a sister and spent a lot of time in that Elizabeth area. My parents, who unfortunately passed away, but I have aunts and cousins and a whole lot of people who I love are still in the Jersey area, and a lot of friends and sorors. I left Jersey to go to school, and I attended Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia. And when I left that, I started my business career. And then eventually headed off to Northwestern to get an MBA at Kellogg Graduate School of Management. And I had a whole career in both the automotive field, financial services, and education. And still very fortunate to have such wonderful relationships with family and friends in New Jersey and all the relocations I've done pretty much across the U.S. And so feel very blessed that I get to call friends who are more like family than anything else. And so very grateful for that.
That's pretty awesome. So your bio has a lot of talking points. So I like to start off with the consulting and coaching. Can you tell us a little bit about your consulting and coaching business?
Sure. Thanks. Well, I consider consulting and coaching very connected. So under the consulting umbrella, the focus is on helping organizations and businesses figure out what their strategy is and to help them drive business results by looking at how they actually lead people to achieve a healthy organization. A lot of times it's all about numbers and some other metrics, but ultimately it's people work hardest for people they value and respect. And so I really focus on how do you develop leaders who create that kind of environment from a senior executive level all the way down to middle management, so that we can figure out how to address one of our biggest issues, especially today, which is retention and commitment and motivation and inspiration in our work. And so I really spend a lot of time consulting about the business that you do. But then after I understand the business, I literally move in a very unique way to how we're going to coach on how you're going to move people to a place that is actually going to drive results. Now, coaching specifically, I do with individuals and I do small groups. I have really grown to love the small group concept because I find there's so much richness in the conversation that takes place across from one person who's being coached to another. But again, spending a great deal of time looking at skill sets and competencies, because both of those are really critical. And which doesn't get talked about much, I spend a lot of time coaching to values, because I think that a lot of times leaders have these values that are important to them. And then we have relationships with people and we wonder sometimes why we're in conflict or struggle. And sometimes it's because our values are not aligned. And so what I found is if I'm able to help people figure out what those values are and where they actually intersect and connect, then I can coach a leader to do a better job connecting with his or her employee. And I can actually help the business be more effective, because now you're having employees who are more committed to the leader and then thus committed to the business at hand. As you guys know, they always say, that people don't leave the company, they leave their leader. And so my coaching and consulting is around helping leaders do a better job of retaining people and creating a healthy organization, because that ultimately is what's going to drive results. If the organization is not healthy and the culture is not healthy, then people are going to leave, and they're usually in search of a better leader with better culture.
So I recently saw a video from Simon Sinek about, basically about Navy SEALs and high productivity, high results, and high trust. And then so I thought that was interesting. And I was like, is that the type of coaching and concept that you apply as well to in your classes, or do you disagree or agree with that concept?
I agree to the point where I think people have to trust.
Yeah.
If you don't trust, the rest of the foundation's not going to work, right? There's a gentleman, Patrick Lencioni, who wrote The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And the first foundation of that is a lack of trust. So if I don't trust you, it doesn't matter what you say. And trust is comprised of 4 things. Trust is based on consistency. It's based on your competence. It's based on communication. And the last one is it's based on care. So if you add in everything Simon says, and I'm a fan, I actually think it really does matter. But trust has to be there first, and you have to earn trust. That is a daily deposit, right? And you need enough deposit so on the day that things don't go so well and there's a withdrawal, you still have something left in the bank for people to go, okay, I'll give you a little grace on this one, right? And so trust is really important. I think leaders sometimes go in assuming that title and position means trust. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to earn the trust by doing your own work first and foremost as a leader, investing in other people to do their work, and then being really clear about communicating goals and objectives, that whole reward and recognition. And then people have to understand what their roles and responsibilities are and the expectations. But I still come back to what I said before. If we're all working off of the same values, the advantage that you get is that I get to coach you to values, not just assignments. So when you're out of sync with what you're doing and our value is effective teamwork, I don't have to just say to you, well, you didn't complete the assignment. I get to ask you a different question, which is, how is your behavior impacting the value of us achieving teamwork? It's a different way of looking at it just than focusing on the assignment itself. And people can connect to value sometimes, strangely enough, even quicker than they can the assignment. Plus, the ability to come up with excuses for assignments is greater than when you start talking about, oh, this was your value, because now it really is personal when you talk about a value.
Yeah. Wow.
Loaded.
You can keep on talking on that, because that's it. It's a spark of my interest all the time, you know, always. And that's awesome. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Thank you. Lisa, so, you know, there's a second division, right, to Lisa Harris Dare to Bear Fruit. Yeah. Tell us about the motivational speaking and the broadcasting and about Sirius XM. You're really interested in that.
Thank you so much for the question. Yes, I as Joe knows from just teaching, I love talking, but I don't want to talk for the sake of talking. I want to help people figure out how to move themselves from wherever it is that they are, where they're stuck or they're struggling, to a space where they can actually accomplish their goals. And so the motivational speaking part covers everything from one year I was so excited. I did a presentation and it was just for women. And it was how do Disney characters help us define who we are as women? So I like to create creative ways that we get to look and think about ourselves, right? And I actually used the villains in that exercise to get women to think about skill sets and talents, because we're not raised to be villains. We're raised really to be the nice, sweet girls that show up in Disney. And you can be that. But some of the stronger characteristics that people say are negative are actually good characteristics for survival and mobility and flexibility and so forth. So I love those opportunities. I do a presentation on a brand called You, helping people recognize that they are a brand, and how does that brand translate into an effective leader, a better member of your family, a more committed member to do something in your community. So I love talking about leadership. I talk about change. And I've been very fortunate to be able to talk to women's groups, nonprofit organizations, small teams. And really the undercurrent of all of it is that self-awareness that you have the capacity to do what you want to do. But my role is to help you dissect those places where you're struggling, and how do we get you to a place that you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I do spend a lot of time doing motivational speaking, and I really enjoy it. Now, Sirius was really wonderful because I did a brand presentation and was interviewed on Sirius about the brand presentation work that I do. And I was really excited because the conversation was around how are we going to help people find employment? And I'm really passionate about this question, because if you think about interviews, most of the time, the number one question someone will ask you is, tell me about yourself. And it's a very common question, but it's amazing how people just ramble on when you go to ask them that question. And so when you think about branding yourself and you think about that question, what the goal here when I do the speech is, what is the message that you want to tell people? Like, what are the 3 to 5 things that are most important to you, that when you walk away, if you've interviewed with 5 people, they almost can all come back and say they were timely, they were effective, and they know how to build teams. What's the brand message? So that opportunity on Sirius was an opportunity for me to give back by sharing those tips and tools on how to actually be more effective in the brand yourself.
So what's your why?
What's your why? Yes. What's your why?
Awesome.
Yeah. What's your why? And for me, my why is grounded in my faith. And the rest of that why becomes to be in service, which again is why I love what you all are doing, because at the end, we were not brought here just for ourselves. We were brought here to be in service to people. So your why needs to be tied to how you're intended to give back, which is the other element of when I go out to speak, is how do we care for other people and care for ourselves in the process.
Absolutely.
You took that whole question at the end and just like, I can't wait to get to that again, because like there's gonna, like, I'd like to touch on that why thing a little later.
Sure.
Yeah. So we touched a little bit on your career and kind of American Express and the Ford company. If you'd like, tell us a little bit about some experience you had there in your role.
Oh, sure. Let's see. I think about, and some of my work today is also in the diversity and belonging space. And I usually share this as probably one of the horror stories for my career. When I first started off, I worked for Ford, and I was sent to live in Memphis, Tennessee. Now, you take a Jersey girl and you send her south, but Memphis was very different. And my travel travel territory happened to be in Arkansas. And I traveled with my coworker at the time, and we went around and we visited all of our dealers. And then the next week I went back by myself, and I sat down and this is the horror story version. My parts manager sat across from me, and he proceeded to tell me how in that area they did not like people of color. And so by the time he finished this long dissertation, he literally offered me the opportunity to walk out of his office and never come back. And I thought, well, this is really interesting. And I thought for a few moments, am I being punked? Is somebody videotaping this? Because this cannot be, factual. And I thought it was very interesting because in that moment, I thought, now that I have to make a decision. I can get up and leave, or I can actually sit here and see if we can engage in a dialogue. So I actually just said to him, I said, actually, I can't leave. I said, Ford sent me here to do a job. I think I'm more than capable of doing the job, and I'm going to keep on doing my job. So as far as I'm concerned, pull out your order form, write down everything you need, and I'll take your order. And when you're done, I'll go process it, and I'll see you again, next week. And he just sat there and looked at me because I had no intentions of leaving. None whatsoever. And I reminded him that his knowledge of other people's histories was probably really small, so we weren't going to spend any time on that. And I share that because when I think about competencies and skill sets, we all are going to face difficult situations. They may not be like that, but difficult is all relative to the individual. But our ability to think on our feet, to be comfortable with who we are, and that self-awareness, when you think about emotional intelligence, to have that sense of resilience or courage is really important, because if you're somewhere, you're supposed to be there for a reason. Don't let anyone move you from that space that you're in to accomplish what you're supposed to accomplish and to learn what you're supposed to learn. And the beautiful part of that story is at the end of my 2 years in that market, the dealer, the owner, actually threw me a going away party. They had never in the history of that dealership thrown a party for a Ford employee, and told my leadership that they really wish they wouldn't move me. They had enjoyed my time being there. So we started off in a very difficult position and ended up in a space where they were like, even given all those issues, they still would have preferred me to stay there as their rep. And so that sense of resilience and commitment and stick-to-itness, and just your belief in yourself that you are where you are because, again, there's something that you need to accomplish and to learn.
Wow.
Powerful. See?
Right.
And then that brings us to where we met you, which is you were a professor, an author. So here's something I have to ask. And what has teaching, I've never asked any of my teacher friends or family or anything like that, but what has teaching taught you?
Ooh, that is such an awesome question. It takes a lot of pondering, but the thing I think of most is an appreciation for curiosity.
Yeah.
And I use that actually when I'm coaching leaders as well. Teachers have to be curious. I realize that we have gone to school and we have been properly trained and or whatever the experiences are. But every student brings something to you. Every person who sits even in a class I teach today as a professional, when I taught your class, every person brings in something that if you're curious enough, you can actually learn something as a teacher. And so it can't always be a one-sided download. It has to be a partnership. I always hope that when I step in a classroom, someone was going to say something or do something, create something, whatever it was, that was going to be a new tool in my own toolbox, a story I could share when I went to the next class, because I'd like to believe every time I showed up in class that there was something that I could provide that wasn't always a Lisa Harris story, right? It's nice when you're a professor and you got lots of your personal stories. It's even more important that you can talk about Joe's story or Carlos' story or Mary's story, whomever, because it makes it real for the people that you're teaching. So that sense of curiosity and a willingness to learn is really important. I think if you're going to be a teacher of anything, and I want to say all of us are teachers, title aside, we're all teaching somebody something. And the question is, are you doing it in a way that uplifts and encourages people? Or are you impacting them in a way that's not inspiring or encouraging them? So if you're curious, at least you're at the 50% mark. The rest you have to work on.
Yeah. It's a lot to take in. So tell us a little bit about your member of a sorority as well.
One of my, and it's interesting because today I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. We were founded in 1913, and it is a sisterhood dedicated to community service and dedicated to improving the lives of people in underrepresented communities and in communities abroad. We have chapters here in the US, we have chapters in China, we have chapters in Africa. It's a global organization. And today happens to be my 37th anniversary of being in the sorority. And I laugh as I say that because you all are so young. But thank you so much. And I have 49 beautiful, what we call line sisters, who we're all celebrating today. And that organization I pledged in was Gamma Iota at Hampton University. So really excited to be with you all today and be able to say happy anniversary to my sorority sisters.
So that brings up 2 points.
Yeah.
First one is that organization sounds a lot like Happy Smiles, Carlo.
It does. It very much does. We have to get more sisters with us and brothers and everybody. So,
we need a few more chapters globally.
That's it, globally and everything.
We can make that happen.
Yes.
You know what? And is that the one where like the I guess the characters, not character, but you guys appreciate the elephant, correct?
Yes, you are absolutely correct. Yes, the symbol is an elephant. It actually is. Yes.
So what we have here now, and I'm sorry to sound like the warden from Cool Hand Luke, because I'm not able to communicate, but it's
what an
the most
analogy.
well-rounded guest from all our. It pretty much embodies everything about Invest 360 and Happy Smiles, because like everything we've heard so far, it's been pretty like well-rounded. What do you think, Carlo?
I agree. I mean, I'm astounded by everything that I'm hearing and everything, and I'm learning. You said, thank you for that, because there's a lot that I do in my daily life that I need to hear this on a daily basis. So thank you for that. And one of the topics that we want to talk to you about is, we have the guest on who seems to be the most qualified to talk about her experience leading through pain, right? And the pandemic, the struggles, and more. There's people hurting and in need of inspiration, motivation, and so much more out there, right? Yeah. That's one of the reasons we started Happy Smiles, to help that through kindness. So if we can we dive into it a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. And thank you both for that. Yeah, this for many people, I think people were leading in pain long before the pandemic. I think the pandemic just made some things more obvious than others. And I think when I think about leading through pain, some of that is, there are mothers and fathers who were trying to figure out childcare when they were going to work every day, right? There are people who are working multiple jobs to make ends meet and still be there for children and spouses. There are single people who are trying to be successful and trying to find work-life balance. There is the pandemic that has taken us to having an opportunity to lead face-to-face and in a human connection, which is really important to all of us, to sitting on Zoom and struggling to figure some of that out. There's just some of the quiet, silent pain that has come from sitting in this pandemic, where people are questioning themselves about how effective are they as a leader? Can they do this? Do they have the capacity? In my work today, I work with both the academic side and the health system side. So I think about our nurses and our doctors who are working these long shifts and trying to save lives and supervise their team members who are also working long shifts, and the commitment that it takes. And so I've been thinking a lot lately about what does it mean to lead through pain? And I think one of the is interesting because it comes full circle, but to lead through pain requires a whole lot of self-introspection. And I think a lot of times we don't get the time to actually, like we mentioned, emotional intelligence. First thing is about self-awareness. We don't get a lot of time to do a lot of assessing of ourselves. You go to a class, you see the chart, maybe you do a DISC assessment and it tells you you're an I, or you do some of those other assessments and it gives you letters, right? And that's all lovely, but I'm not sure if that allows you to sit down and ask yourself some questions that are around the umbrella of who are you? And who do you really want to be as a human being, as a parent, as a spouse, as a coworker, and what's really important to you? Because until I'm really clear about what that is, I'm going to be in a little bit more pain. And then the reality is I'm going to show up at work, and here we go again. My values may not align anymore with the values of the organizations I'm working for. As you both know, there's been several articles out there on the great resignation that's taking place. Literally all these people are quitting their jobs or not going to work, and whatever that struggle may be, that's pain. And that means that we as people are sitting in spaces starting to do this form of introspection so that we can figure out, are we in the right spaces and places? And are we asking ourselves those difficult questions so that we can move out of this place of pain? And if you're a leader right now, trying to figure out how do you lead in the midst of your own pain, let alone the pain of the people that you're actually leading, it means you have to sit down and start having some difficult conversations, which we struggle with often, right? About what does it mean? Who are you, and how do I value you in this space? And what's important to you in terms of how I lead you and how you show up as an employee? There's this thing. I just had a conversation with someone. What are your love languages, right? And that's a simple thing, but I need to know what your love language is so I can figure out, do you want recognition, and how do you want that recognition, and what does that look like for you, right? And to be clear about what people's pains are. So if I happen to be the person who's working 2 jobs to actually make ends meet, and a leader is not listening, not asking me questions, has no idea who I am, doesn't understand my struggle, then that trust issue is not going to be there. And so we have to slow down and really spend time getting to know who it is we're leading and who it is we're co-partnering with. So that takes on the other part of this thing about pain, because if we look at pain and what it means, we may all be in pain together. So how about we get clear about what it is so we can figure out, are there parts of it that I can help you get out of, and parts that maybe you can support me through? And what do we do that's actually different to be able to accomplish our goals and work differently? I mean, think about it. Before the pandemic, if you ask most corporations, could someone work from home? The answer was no. Not going to let you do it. We didn't care about your schedules. We didn't care about your families. And it's not meant to be negative. And that's not all companies, but there weren't always policies or other things to do it. Now the pandemic shows up, and now we all have a new way of working. Well, wouldn't it be wonderful to have leaders who understood all the pains, who literally could figure out solutions, who use skills like innovation and creativity and working with policies and procedures to figure out, how do I remove some of the pain that exists so we can focus on leading together, accomplishing our goals, and serving our customers in a way that's different than it's ever been. And that is a form of personal innovation and personal motivation that leaders have to have, particularly in this space that we are in.
So when you bring the conversation to the table about best practices and policies and so forth, what happens when the reaction is that of Allen Iverson? Practice?
I get that response. Practice. And I think the thing is you get used to it. What usually happens is people, I think, close down for a little bit because they're like, hey, I'm in pain and I'm not really trying to fix somebody else's pain. And I don't really, it's the what's in it for me to actually do that. And so then that becomes where you start sitting down looking at data. Right? Let's look at how your business is going and growing, yes or no. Let's look at your retention. Let's look at, again, who do you want to be as a leader? And where are those, what I call quick wins? And then where are those things that might take a little longer? Because the other side of that is when you start saying pain to people, it's not really something that you use in leadership, right? If you got pain, go handle it and go on about your business. So to actually even bring it up as a discussion means people have to sit a little bit with it. And like you say, practice. But we do need to acknowledge it because going back, we come full circle. How do people trust if they don't even think that you care? And a pain point is a point of caring.
Right.
And so I can't fix everything, but I can acknowledge what it is. I can be curious about what you're going through. And then I can figure out, are there actual solutions that we can come up with or present to minimize the pain? I'm not going to be able to fix, that you don't have someone to work or watch your children per se, right? Unless we go on a campaign to see if you can get the company or the business to have daycare. And right now that's probably not going to happen or realistic, but there are things that we can do. And then are things we must acknowledge we can't. And then how do we work around it? So it really just requires, to your question, Joe, it really requires several conversations because people have to digest that because no one wants to call it pain. We usually use words like we're struggling or we're in difficulty or, okay, but all of that is pain.
They have to be open to speaking about their pain. And like you said, practice. And I think that's the practice too, practicing being open and taking those baby steps to get in there.
Yes.
And people might just shut down and can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
Or
and I think that's a really good point because, people do shut down because really we all have a lot going on emotionally. This is a whole lot. And one of the things I talk about, I have a program on the landscapes of your life is this is the season where we have to look at our emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, and financial well-being, right? And when we think about a leader, we don't necessarily always think about people in those 5 categories, but it really is important because when those are out of whack, the employee can be out of whack. Right. And so, again, I'm not saying we can fix anything, but can we acknowledge what it is so we can be honest about whether we can or cannot do anything to fix it? And to not acknowledge it means it just sits there and it festers. And then we get these disconnects from the relationship and from the organization that I think ends up eventually having people do this massive resignation that's going on.
So to touch on that too, now, I don't know if this is the proper term, but I'm going to call it load balancing of your team. And so you have the ones who are obviously struggle. They have their struggles, and then you have but each of those struggles are opportunities.
Yes.
And then you have the zealous, passionate side of your team.
Yes.
So how do you basically inspire the one side without making it seem like you're giving them a crutch while rewarding the other side without like, oh, look at goody two shoes over there?
Right. That's a good question.
Well, I think that's it's an excellent question. And I don't think that's always easy. I think that I would tell people to first start to make sure that you are all aligned on what your goals are. Because I think a lot of times people come into their work, they got a job description, they have tasks, but I think after a period of time, people forget the overall business goals and then the goals of their area or their unit. It becomes about them. And so to that point, if I'm the go-getter, I'm the early adopter, I'm moving forward, I don't have time for those people over there who's struggling and can't get it together, right? Because y'all slowing me down, right? And then those people are over there, rolling their eyes at the other people and then making comments, like well, it's never going to work for them anyway. They're just burning out, right? And so the first thing is, can we all get clear about our goals and then get clear? And this is one of my favorite things. Does everybody on the team even know what everybody is responsible for doing? And having that clarity around that, your goals, and then what everybody is responsible for doing, also allows you as a leader to kind of back up just a little bit, because when people are clear and then clear about what's being accomplished and what isn't, then you have to create the environment where you have what I call co-coaching taking place. So I'm going to say, okay, Joe, you're doing an outstanding job, and I really appreciate it. And this might be a private coaching thing. You're doing such an awesome job. You're moving far ahead, but the team is in need of your skill set on your analytical thinking and your financial savvy. And I recognize, if you don't mind, Carlo, me using your name, Carlo, that might not be his skill set or his area of comfort. And I'm wondering, since the goal of the team is for us to do this, are there some skills that you can share with Carlo that will strengthen him and encourage him, that might help him feel as though he can be, and I wouldn't say it like this because you don't want to ever get employees saying something bad about it, but something you can invest in him to help him be more effective. And then start cross-sharing competencies, right? Get people together where strengths and areas of opportunities, because I hate to call them weaknesses, areas of opportunities can actually be meshed together. And the more projects that you give people, the more opportunity. You bring it back to, I love you as a high flyer, but you know what? We all fly higher if we all can do this together. And then you have to think about, how do you reward that person, which goes back to what I said before. Do leaders have a spreadsheet that says, if I'm going to recognize Lisa Harris, by the nature of her love language or anything else, Lisa Harris doesn't want me to bring her in front of the room and pat her on the back. She wants me to come behind her, pat her on the shoulder, tell her I said thank you, and move on. Do you know that? Right? Do we know what it means to reward and recognize people in a way that values them? So if Joe, you really needed to get credit for Carlo, I need to say in the room, I want to thank Joe and Carlo for the partnership they did. Look at the results that came from them working together. And then you find some way from that, you're growing people because they're working together, and maybe even they start to change their perception of their team members because they learned something about them, whether that was their pain or their struggle, that is actually going to help them. Now, we're going to be realistic, because we all know that there are people who are sitting on the bottom part of this thing who are struggling and they're not trying to move, right? They are stuck. And so they are much harder to move. But I also say, have a coaching conversation and ask them some difficult questions. Do you want to be part of the team? What does it mean to be a team member to you? How do you feel you're being impacted by the team? And what might you be doing that's impacting the team? And what does it mean for you to stay here and be effective? Like, why are you here? What brought you here? What was your goal or your dream when you showed up? And then how do we take that and figure out how to move you forward? Or do we need to be asking some more difficult questions around, is this the right space for you, and what else should we do? But it needs to be competency-based, and it needs to be their input on what it is they think is actually blocking them. And I just need to add, sometimes people sit in that space because they've had really poor leaders who have not valued and respected them, who have not invited them into the conversation, who have basically labeled them and passed them on and put them over, left them behind, right? And so you're dealing with the pain of all of that, which is, another category, and the person is showing up the same way. So if we're having a conversation, we get to ask, what's been going on in your career? Because one, you don't want to show up as the same leader they have always had. And two, you want to give them back the responsibility of still standing in their place of integrity and courage and doing their work while trying to figure out how to address some of these issues if you can, but also being prepared to say, this might not be the right space or the right job. And we need to, the term I use, we need to coach you out or coach you on to something else. Did that answer your question?
Very well.
Very well. Very well.
Yes. So Lisa, I'm going to move on to the next part. With all that you've done and accomplished, right? It only leads me to believe that, you've helped so many people. You've inspired a lot of people, whether you know it or not.
Oh, thanks.
We talked about how it's cultivation, how it makes you feel. How would you describe to someone that's trying to blaze their own trail, start their own business, be an entrepreneur, start a side hustle? What would your tips be for them?
I always love the term the side hustle. I would say to them to spend a little time and go back and ask themselves when they were a child, what did they want to be when they grew up? What was really important to them? And then what about whatever that job or career opportunity was that really caused them to have great passion around it, right? So they're really clear. And does whatever that is translate to what it is they're trying to do today, right? And because I am a person of faith, I would actually add in the next step is to really spend time in prayer, about and seeking whatever wisdom or guidance comes from your prayer life, right? The other thing I would do is I would say it's so important to surround yourself with people who have the ability to speak honestly to you, who can tell you the truth, who can tell you when your stuff is phenomenal and when your stuff stinks. Who love you enough to make sure that you don't stay in the space that you're in, but that you focus on all that is necessary to do your side hustle, right? And I would tell you that there's probably some more practical things that you need to do. You need to ask yourself some difficult questions about what it is you're trying to do, why you're trying to do it, what's your end goal or your passion for doing it, whose life are you going to change and impact as a result of actually doing it. You need to figure out who with those people who are going to feed into you, who's like your posse and your tribe, right? They can be the people who can speak to you honestly, but they can also be people who have skill sets that you don't have or not your greatest skill sets. So if your skill set is not in analytics, surround yourself with someone who can do some analyzing of the data, the information that you need to have. If yours is not marketing, find someone who's into marketing. If it's not social media, so find that posse or that tribe that can help guide you and give you insight. And I think it's also important that you do your research, whatever area you're interested in, whatever the work is, do your research. In many ways, most of us who have side hustles may have a side hustle because of that passion. Maybe it's something from your childhood, or maybe that side hustle is something that you connected with somebody. Maybe you decide you want to open up the next Chick-fil-A, right? Or maybe something happens to you. And I will share this story. I talked to a woman who was a dancer, and she started having reactions to clothing. And which is really hard when you think about it, because we have to wear clothes every day. And as a result of this, in her lap, as she put it, she loved dancing. She loved clothes and fashion. She came up with a clothing line that is made out of bamboo. And if you have allergies, interestingly enough, bamboo does not cause allergies. So here we go with thinking out of the box and finding new ways to either create a business or a side hustle, right? In regard to that. And then I would just say, write out a plan, follow your plan, stick to your plan. If you deviate from your plan, figure out a strategy and come back. But always focus on having that plan and that strategy that's going to move you forward. Oh, and it has to be okay for it not to work. And I know this is a hard thing to say, because we are people who don't like to fail. Failure doesn't work. Here we go with the military. Failure is not an option. But I think we can go through a lot of wars and a lot of events where people fail. So we need to start looking at things as not being points of failure, but lessons learned. What did I need to learn that I did not know here that is going to make my side hustle, my new job, or whatever it is, make me better at it? Maybe I needed to learn how to communicate differently with people, how to walk in the bank and get a loan and have a different conversation, creative perspectives. Whatever it is, there are lessons. And so the last thing I would say is you need to document your experience, because you're not going to remember all of this in your learning if you don't start writing things down. And that will allow you to go back and say, oh my goodness, let me do more of this and success and celebrate it, and let me stop doing this, or maybe find some other people to help me. And those would be the things I would suggest that people do.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and that kind of leads me to, next question. You kind of talked about it a little bit, about self-inspection. As owner of an inspection company, we use Saturdays and Sundays of our self-inspection days.
Okay.
So we know, you talking about that. How important do you think that is in business, as you were kind of just touching on?
Well, Carl, if you don't mind, I'm going to turn the question around a little bit. When you all are working on your Saturdays and Sundays to do self-inspection, what does that day look like? What are you all actually doing?
So in terms of what we're doing, we're using it for social media, and we're putting out posts to our social media audience out there to get them thinking and get them knowing about the different things that you can do to bring that self-inspection into your life. So we're putting out different quotes and different poems and things like that to kind of get you thinking a little bit. And we just do that I do that on a daily basis, just trying to get myself thinking about self-inspection. But so that's what we do, to get the audience out there thinking about that.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Joe, you want to throw something in for self-inspection as well?
I mean, I as someone who looks into very hard to get those quotes for Carlo to post.
Yeah.
I do very much believe wholeheartedly in self-inspection.
Absolutely.
I asked because I like the word that you use. You're looking into those things and checking and verifying. And I think this is, again, emotional intelligence. That whole self-awareness is really important, right? And so it's the inspection of, I'll use this as an example. As a person who does speaking, I used to tell people all the time, when you speak, be very conscious of the ums, wells, like, and stuff. And so I have a tendency to count them in my head if I actually do them. That's my inspection, right? And we all do them. But the question is, how often? And I had a student once who did a presentation, and I started ticking. He did 63 ums, wells, like, in his presentation. And it was so many, I don't even remember what he talked about. And so part of that introspection and inspection is what am I actually doing? Where am I doing it well? And where are my areas of opportunity? And every time I say it, people then start counting after I say it. So don't count everybody. I'm quite well aware of it in my head. But how am I looking at what I'm doing well and what I'm not doing well? And then I have what I call an amazing group of people who I love and who love me, who are willing to look at this broadcast and say, Lisa, you could consider this, maybe this is an opportunity, consider this and the other. And so that inspection is also, again, tapping into your posse and those people who can give you words of wisdom or encouragement to actually do what you're doing. And you mentioned social media, and I think that's really important, because today, so much of what we do requires your brand to show up on social media. So ensuring that your brand is what you need it to be, and then you inspect it and check it, and be very conscious of the messages, the images, and the things that you put out there, because people are forming impressions of who you are. So inspecting that aspect of the work that you do is really important. And just being clear about who you are, what you want, and are you on track to actually get it? And if not, what do you need to do that's going to put you in that space to achieve your goal?
Smooth answer. There you go.
Yep.
You might be biased, Joe.
Might be. So to close out, before we do go into intermission, there was the question about, we touched on it earlier, and that was the why. So tell us, are you moving in your why?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because I'm in this interesting season in my life where my book and the work that I'm doing currently all fall under my passion for leadership and education. And I did the same thing I just said to you all. When I was little, I said, what did I want to be when I grow up? And I remember at one point I wanted to be a doctor. And then I realized I didn't like blood. So we moved on from that to I love writing and I love creating new things. And so I feel as though I'm in my why, but I have some dreams of things I really want to do that would really put me in my why. I love the subject of leadership and I love education. And so I want to start my own school. And I want to start my own school so that some of these things that we're talking about, I can help young people start to develop those skills earlier so that they will learn to trust and believe in themselves and they'll understand the value of leadership. And I also, in this passion of writing in the book, I wrote a play and I would love to see the play either become an actual play on Broadway or become a movie because in it, there are a lot of lessons that people need to learn about who we are and how we treat each other. Because ultimately that is why I love leadership so much is because I want to make sure we're treating each other with dignity and respect. So I do feel like I'm in my why. I'm just getting through some of the education and the curiosity and a few of the struggles and a little bit of the pain to knock some of this stuff off so I can get to the place of those larger dreams. And those are pretty large dreams to have. But I often say that if you dream small, it's too easy and we're supposed to stretch. So we might as well make them big. What's that old saying? If you don't achieve your actual goal, if you fall short, you still have accomplished something. I think that in my life, I have always wanted to make sure I could help somebody and teach someone. And so I feel like I'm in my why. And those are just different spaces to achieve my why.
Wow.
It's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are going to take a little brief intermission. We're going to show a little commercial real quick, and then we will be back with the rapid fire questions. All right, here we go.
That was cool.
All right. Here we go. Rapid fire question time.
Let's go. Let's go.
All right.
All right. So, not sure if you're into pizza, but you've been up and down the Mercer County area. You've been all throughout Jersey. I mean, you've been to a lot of different places. So, gotta ask you which one's the best: Trenton tomato pie, Brooklyn, or Chicago deep dish?
Oh my gosh. My favorite is Chicago deep dish.
Okay.
You have to end this interview.
Yeah, I know. I knew you both were. Remember now, I know you've been up and down New Jersey, and I love home, and I know there are some phenomenal pizza places at home, but I am just like a huge fan of Chicago pizza. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
Don't cut off the interview just for pizza.
So, all right. Favorite local restaurant for you? It doesn't have to be local to where we are, but past or present.
Interesting enough, when I was younger, when I grew up in Elizabeth, there's a restaurant, and this is more past because I'm not in New Jersey anymore, but I loved Al Garvey's. It was right off of 1 and 9. And it was one of my favorite places. I could literally walk from where I lived in Meadow Street right across the street and go over and grab some Al Garvey's. When I came home back to New Jersey, it was one of the first places I would grab some food. And it was spare ribs and rice. And it was just phenomenal. It was one of my favorite spots.
Just got me hungry again. Favorite place to get coffee, if you're a coffee drinker, or tea, or
yeah. Interesting enough, my favorite tea is from Starbucks, and it's a combination of mint and peach, and I forgot, it's terrible because now I'm trying to tell you and I forgot the name of it, but they call it a medicine ball, but they tried to change the name because they didn't want people to think it was going to cure them. But that is actually one of my favorite teas, is the medicine ball, peach and mint.
That is a good tea. In fact, like when you order it or someone else orders it, everyone looks at them like,
I see somebody popping up behind you.
That was a cute face back there.
Absolutely.
She's our senior correspondent.
That's it.
I love it. That's the side hustle starting early.
Yes. So, all right. So, I don't know if you watch football or anything like that, but what's your favorite NFL team?
Now, I'm going to give two answers because I don't want you all to be in pain and to cut me off again for the second wrong answer. But my actual favorite team is the Steelers. It has always been the Pittsburgh Steelers. But my second favorite team is the Giants. But I love the Pittsburgh Steelers. I have a terrible towel. I have been at the stadium. I was there one day when Jerome Bettis was playing and got to be on the field, and I didn't have any concept of how large football players were until they stand up next to you or run past you, and you're like, oh my goodness. But I am a Steelers fan, true and true.
All right. I mean, as a Cowboy fan, I'm offended twice.
Oh my gosh, how did that happen, Joe? Say it ain't so, Joe.
I'm not offended at all. Giants all the way. Come on.
Thank you.
No.
You forget pizza. That should cause you to move out of New Jersey.
All right. So now, being from Elizabeth, right?
Yes.
This is probably one that like might upset a lot of people where you're from. So is it called pork roll or Taylor ham?
Oh, it's Taylor ham. I don't know where did pork roll come from. Come on, people, it's Taylor ham.
You know, that's funny because I grew up in Woodbridge and I always called it Taylor ham. And then when I moved down here, I'm like, no, pork roll makes more sense. Why am I calling it Taylor ham?
And it's funny because in stores here in Virginia, the one box says Taylor ham and the next thing with the roll says pork roll. So I'm like, okay, at the end of the day, whichever one you like it is. But when I grew up, the box said Taylor ham. So that's what I call it.
All right. So here's the question that like even it irks Governor Phil Murphy as well. But is Trenton South Jersey, North Jersey, or Central Jersey?
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
Is Trenton South Jersey,
Oh.
North Jersey, or Central Jersey?
Well, that's a really good question because I'm trying to picture where it sits right now in my head, and I don't know. Well, South Jersey. Well, that's a really good question. I don't know. I'm stuck between South and Central.
Well,
is it North?
Central Jersey exists.
Yeah. As an Elizabeth woman, I would say, you know, you would think South Jersey because that's what I always thought. But
right. Yeah, actually, you know what? That's you know what? It's funny you say that because now that I'm thinking about it, and you go, yeah, I was way off. Wrong. Buzzer answer.
I'm just gonna throw everybody off and just say it's West Central.
West
Central. There you go.
Let's just get the guy to come back on for like unsolved mysteries, and we'll just make it a whole episode.
That's it. It's never going to be answered.
No.
We'll actually have the ghost of John Taylor on there to say what it was really supposed to be called too.
There you go.
It was supposed to be called Taylor ham.
All right. Professor Lisa Harris, it was a pleasure having you on. We learned a lot. It was a great episode. Just from the classes that we've had together, for when I took the NJ step, and I still actually have the books,
Yes.
Gung Ho and the Harvard Business School book.
Yes.
So it was a great class, and great guest to have on. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you
Lisa,
both for having me. Oh, thank you both for having me. I wish you continued success. And I just, again, want to encourage everyone, make sure you invest in Happy Smiles Inc. I think it's really important. So thank you both for having me. I really appreciate the time.
So I actually have one more thing to say to you. So one of the students in the class, his name was Hector. And his brother, Jimmy Lee, has a show too called Rotated Views. So what I'm going to do is it's one of the top rated podcasts in their genre.
Oh,
so I'm going to forward that on to you so you can be a guest of Jimmy Lee and the crew, which includes Hector, so they can.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
I friends of our show, and we're friends of theirs, and it's great. So
thank you, Lisa. Thank you for being present here today. You know, like really just being here with us and talking and giving everybody your all. So thank you for that.
Appreciate that. Well. All I can say is thank you both so much. Again, thank you, Joe, for the invitation. Carlo, it's just wonderful to meet you. I wish you both much success and happiness. Joe, thank you so much for that transfer. It gives me a chance to share a little bit more of my love. So I appreciate you both very much. Thank you so much.
No problem.
It was a joy to be here.
Thank you. So on a special Saturday episode, we have this Saturday coming up. We're just going for broke here. We have Trenton, born and raised in Trenton, and the first female Harlem Globetrotter, Lakeisha Sutton. So we will be having her on Saturday morning. So
that's awesome.
Right, Carlo?
Very excited. That's absolutely right. We're very excited for it.
So. That's awesome. Talk about a why question. That'll be an awesome answer.
Absolutely.
But all right. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Professor, for coming on. Thank you, Carlo, for just being an awesome co-host and friend. And see you Saturday.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
See you later.